Hey, I'm Ernst Loosen, and I want to introduce you to our Grand Cru dry wines, which we produce since 2008 in a very special way. You know, here in Germany we call the dry Rieslings, which are produced in a Grand Cru vineyard, we call them GG. GG for great growth, or the German name for Grand Cru is großes Gewächs. You will see it here on the bottle. We have it all on the bottles, and which indicates you that if you see a GG on the label, on the bottle, then it indicates for you that the vineyard is a Grand Cru vineyard. 2008, I tasted the wine from my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather from my father's side produced only dry wines 100 years ago, and he did it in a very special way. He kept the wines, I mean, in these days everything had been fermented on natural yeast, indigenous yeast, in old Fuder barrels like you see it here. We have also bigger ones now. We have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 liter barrels. The wines had been fermented on indigenous yeast in these Fuder barrels. Then he left the wine without racking. After the fermentation, he left the wine minimum 12 up to 36 months in the barrel without racking. After the fermentation, he sulfured the wine, topped it regularly up, and kept it very long in the barrel before he bottled it. And then often he waited another 2-3 years before he released it. And I had a 1947 in 2008, an old customer of my father's family brought me the bottle, which was produced in this very traditional style, a dry Riesling, more than 50 years old. And weeks later I opened the bottle and I was so impressed about the quality. We all know that our wonderful Auslese, Spätlese in the fruity style with some residual sweetness have an enormous potential to age. But I was never aware that a dry Riesling from the Mosel can also age more than 50 years. And it was a wonderful wine. Sure, it was not a young, fresh wine, it was a matured wine, but this is the difference. It was matured, beautifully matured, not oxidized. And I was so, amazed and I'm excited about the wine that I said, I want to do wines like this again. I want to make all my dry wines in the style and with this aging potential as my great-grandfather produced dry wines around 1900. And so we started 2008 our program with all our Grand Cru vineyards, and we're using only the oldest vineyards. You know, the Mosel is one of the few areas which have been never hit by phylloxera here in Europe, you know. So we have still a lot of old vineyards with original rootstocks, as in Welener Sonnenmoor, for example, or in Kracher Himmelreich. We have more than 100 years, even up to 130-year-old vineyards, all on their own roots. You know that we have 3 different soil types with our estate. We have the typical blue slate. The blue slate is the slate, the soil of the Mosel, but we have also a slightly different colored slate, that is the red slate, which is basically oxidized blue slate. Through oxidation of blue slate, the iron oxidizes and turns it into red slate, which gives a different character to the wine. And then we have an Erzig, that's the only village in the Middle Mosel which is not based on the slate soil, which is more or less the whole Mosel area, at least the Middle Mosel area. The only village in the Middle Mosel area which is not based on slate is Erzig, the Erziger Würzgarten, the Spice Garden vineyard, which is basically based on weathered red volcanic soil. And I want to go through the 6 Grand Cru vineyards which we own to give you a little bit of an idea what we're doing here. The first wine, let me show you. This is the Kracher Himmelreich. Krach is the village, Himmelreich means Kingdom of Heaven, the Kingdom of Heaven vineyard of Krach. Alte Reben means vieille vigne, old vines, because this is a very old vineyard. It is about 3 lieux-dits in the Kracher Himmelreich, so 3 parcels which are more than 100 years old. And here we produce a Grand Cru dry wine, a GG, großes Gewächs. This wine is blue slate soil, as you see here, and here the blue slate is very typical for its stone fruit character, often green apple, white peach. If it is a little bit more riper, it's yellow peach. It has this typical minerality, the minerally driven acidity of the blue slate soil, as Riesling anyway has a great acidity. This wine was in the cask, in the Fuder cask, for 12 months without racking on the full yeast. We don't do batonnage, so we keep it on the full yeast without racking, not fine yeast, on the complete yeast, without racking it. As I said, we sulfur it and we top it up, but we don't do in the 12 months where we keep the wine on the full yeast, we don't do any batonnage, because we don't like batonnage, because we want to keep the ageability of the wine. And batonnage kills the yeast, and the whole idea about having the yeast in the barrel still, the full yeast, is to keep them alive, because if as long the yeast are alive, they create a reductive environment in the barrel, and this reductive environment in the barrel keeps the oxidation through the stave, this micro-oxidations through the stave, keeps it away. So you can keep a wine very long on the yeast in the barrel without getting any oxidation, but you get all the positive influences of a barrel to the wine, but without oxidation. That's the reason we don't do batonnage. We think that is a much better way to produce dry Rieslings, which can also age more than 10, 20 years. The next wine, the next Grand Cru which we own, is Kracher Dompropst in the same village, Krach. Dompropst is the abbey of the cathedral, and this is a very famous Grand Cru in Krach. Here the same, we have the blue slate soil with Kracher Dompropst. We see here a little bit deeper weathered slate soil in this vineyard. We get a little more of a full-bodied style here with Dompropst, a little more mouthfeel, a longer finish, a little more moderate acidity level here. Overall, a little bit, slightly full-bodied wine, as these monks all look like, they all look a little bit kind of, very well fed. The next wine with the blue slate soil is the famous Wehlener Sonnenruhr. There's also a vineyard, which the Sundial vineyard, Sonnenruhr means Sundial vineyard, in the village of Wehlen. Very old wines. This is comes out of the best parcels, the best Lüdis in the Wehlener Sonnenruhr. The Lüdi is called Leichen. And here we see in Wehlen a character where everybody says that Wehlen produced the most elegant wines for blue slate. It's often said this is the example, this is the model for all blue slate soil. It produces the most elegant, the most delicate wines in the blue slate soil, and Wehlener Sonnenruhr is very elegant, very silky, always this decent, beautiful white peach, sometimes yellow peach, delicate. It's a wine which definitely needs a little bit of age. The wines are, for my opinion, should need minimum 1-2 years in the bottle after bottling. The same here again, 12 months in the barrel on the full yeast, always topping it up, no batonnage. But for my opinion, the Wehlener Sonnenruhr, especially from this vineyard or from this Lüdi parcel, needs a little bit more time in the bottle to open up. But you will see, if you will taste the wines next to each other, you will see this is the most elegant wine. But it's like in Burgundy, Romani Conti is so much more elegant in comparison to La Tâche. Here we're coming rather to this type of wine, this is the Erzinger Würzgarten. This is rather the La Tâche style. This is coming from this red volcanic soil. That's the reason it's called Spice Garden Vineyard, because this red volcanic soil gives completely different aroma structures to the wine as the slate is doing. The red volcanic soil gives more herbal, more spicy character to the wine, slightly earthy. The whole, palate of the wine is a bit more full-bodied, longer in taste, long finish. As we would say, a mouthful of wine, slightly more powerful as slate, and especially these different aroma structures makes it a completely different animal for the Mosel, where everybody expects wines which are elegant, finesse, and slate based. Here we have the red slate, the red volcanic soil, which makes a completely different style of wine. But from my opinion, it's wonderful. It's something different, you know. We all know slate is beautiful, but here you have a type of Riesling, a type of terroir from the Mosel, which is not typical for the Mosel, makes great wines. This is basically the vineyard of my great-grandfather. He was from Erzig, and here we do even wines which are 3 years in the barrel without wrecking. It's amazing. It's really amazing what this extended yeast contact and long barrel aging, as they did 100, 150, 200 years ago, does to the wine. It's kind of an experimental winemaking, because nobody knows anymore what the people did 100 or 200 years ago. And everybody thinks if I keep a wine very long in the barrel, it oxidizes, it becomes Madeira or Madeirized, or get a little bit of sherry type of wine. We just found out it is just the opposite. As longer we keep the wine in the barrel, as more elegant they get, as more delicate, beautiful aging potential, and it's quite amazing. It is just the opposite what everybody thinks if you do a long barrel aging. But I think very important is that it is in the barrel with the yeast, which is still alive, you know, which gives the reductive character and reductive environment to the wine to keep it fresh. The next wine, or the next two wines, are from the red slate soil. First, the Erdener Treppchen. Treppchen means the little staircase vineyard of the village of Erden. Also a 100-year-old vineyard on their own roots, uncrafted wines. This red slate, this oxidized blue slate, gives again a slightly different character to the wine. Often with age, you find with red slate, especially if they're 20 years old, you get this kind of berry fruit character, often or mostly blackcurrant. It's amazing. We have a 97 Erzinger Würzgarten Spätlese from red slate soil, from a Lodi, which is red slate. It's pure blackcurrant, cassis, you know. So this is very typical often with age, but in the youth, you have a little bit more of a kind of a straightforward, more minerally driven acidity. It's very, it's slightly more steely, more nerves, the wine. Also a wine which I prefer with some age. If it has 2-3 years of bottle age, then the wine is coming more together. In the youth, it has a very racy, I would say, driven, minerally driven acidity. Beautiful wine, absolutely gorgeous. And the last not least, our top wine, which is the Erdener Prelat vineyard. You see it's already a different label. This is the original label, as it was, as this vineyard was a monopole 110 years ago. And this vineyard is fairly small. It's only 1.6 hectare, 4 acres, 19 owners in the 1.6 hectare or 4 acres. We are with 1.5 acre, the largest owner in this vineyard, and it is the most fascinating vineyard of the whole Middle Mosel. It is 100% south facing, which is always the best vineyards. It's the warmest vineyards. It gets sunshine from morning to evening. It's 100% steep, so you get direct inclination of sunshine into the steep soil. It warms up the soil, and it's very close to the river. As more closer to the river, as more you have the microclimate influence of the river, the moderating influence of the river to the vineyard. And this vineyard is the only vineyard which has a fourth microclimate. It's completely surrounded by huge, massive red slate cliffs. It looks like an amphitheater. The whole vineyard is completely surrounded by these huge, massive cliffs, like an amphitheater, and that protects the vineyard again from the cold winds and colder influences. So you can say it's the warmest vineyard of the whole area. It is always most ripe. It has the first bud break, it has first flowering, it has first veraison. And here we see more exotic character. The aromatic here is completely different to all the other wines. It's very exotic fruits. It's, you know, mango, guava, maracuja sometimes, you know, red grapefruit, all these kind of rather exotic fruits, you know, which you find here. It is a wine which is extremely complex, but at the same time elegant. And this, I think, makes a great wine. You want a complex wine, but at the same time it should be elegant. You know, it's not a monster. It's a monster in the mouth, but it's finished with a lot of delicacy and elegance. You know, this is a wine which is also over 100 years, 120-year-old uncrafted wines. This is a vineyard or wine which needs very much time to come out, so we usually going to produce it from the 17 vintage on now only as what we call reserve. It will stay 2 years in the barrel in the full yeast, and will be then after bottling another 3 years in the bottle before we're going to release it. So this will be a very special wine, because here we think this vineyard has such a great potential even to stay longer in the barrel, and needs also after bottling another 2-3 years to come out of it again. And so this from the 17 vintage on will be coming out in 2022. Well, that was a little bit of an introduction to our GG's Grand Cru dry wines. It's definitely interesting to taste them, because they're all made in a very historic style, as I said, in a style as my grandfather made dry wines 100 years ago. And you see, there was always a tradition of dry winemaking here in the area, because a lot of people always think that Riesling from the Mosel is always sweet, you know, and which are wonderful wines. I love my sweet cabinets and my sweet Spätes, my sweet Auslese. But there was always a tradition, as the family of my father proved it, who produced only dry wines 100 years ago. And so this tradition I picked up again, the tradition of my grandfather from my father's family, as I continue the wonderful tradition of my mother's family, who is coming from the J.J. Prim family. It's an heritage out of that, who continued and produced only the traditional fruity style Cabernet Spätis and Auslese, no? Thanks, folks. I hope that helped you a little bit to understand our philosophy making dry Rieslings from our Grand Cru vineyards. And I'm sure you will love it if you taste it. And you will see the difference of the terroir also beautifully in these wines.